So guys, thanks for coming. I guess, you know, my name is Robin Berg, and they're calling me the founder of Dairy Pricing. To give you a little background, I started dairying in September of '77. And at that time we were under the government support price, and for me it was a great place to be. Farming is what I was going to do. You know, I tried working in town, but I couldn't do that. So my milk price went up because the support price went up 33 out of the first 36 months. And it was all because everything went up. Support price parity, you know, it went up. And just like all of you, you know, you produce milk, you make money, you produce more milk, you know, things are working right, and that's what you do. And then comes the '83 Farm Bill. And some of you might have been dairying in '83 when all of a sudden they put a 50-cent check off on us to take care of surplus cheese and butter, and then $1 and $1.50, and the high price interest rates and all the everything that went along with dairy. I didn't know anything about what was going on in the dairy industry, what formed the price of milk, none of those kind of things. I never got involved at all in the dairy policies until '96. And that was when the ARPA movement was involved. And do any of you remember that ARPA, which created Lanco, Penland, so forth, and created Scenic Central in Wisconsin? Well, three of the gentlemen who put up the majority of the money to create that live within 30 miles from me. Names Dennis Jelly, Jim McGee, and Ron Klevenstein. And I got to know these gentlemen just prior to them doing this. They were all NFO members, I was not, and you just created a friendship. And as they were building this, it totally made sense to me for dairy farmers to become price makers, not price takers. And I was interested in how they were going to do that, because our milk check was shrinking compared to our cost of operating our farms. And I wanted to see something different. At least we knew we were going to make money. I said to them as they were doing this, and they were sitting around the table, I said, if you're going to get a price from your processor in the front door with an end product pricing system, what are you giving your processor? He's going to give you a price, but does he get a price on the backside? Because he can't operate and lose money. Otherwise he closes your door. I'm producing a raw material that's got to be manufactured in a more stable state. You have to back him up somehow if he's going to give you something in the front. Well, I didn't know how many cows there were in the United States. I didn't know what U.S. production was. You know, Green Bay traded cheese, and that was a boys' club. You know, those who belonged to it, you owned a chair, and they showed up. They always said at 6:30 in the morning, Friday morning, and they had breakfast all together and talked about what the price was going to be, and then they'd go to the exchange at 8 o'clock, and then for half an hour trade cheese, and that's the way it was. I don't know why they chose the Green Bay Cheese Exchange to be the price discovery system, but they did. '96, we also went to component pricing. Now, Wisconsin is cheese country. 85 to 90% of the milk in Wisconsin goes to cheese, and 85 to 90% of that cheese is not consumed in Wisconsin. So the price of cheese is big to Wisconsin's economy, because dairying is Wisconsin's biggest industry. Well, when we got paid on 3.5, we could all figure out our milk checks, you know, what we were in comparison to the cheese factory next door, because there's a lot of, at that time, a lot of independent cheese factories. And so to find a new market was easy. I mean, if you weren't being paid well and another factory was paying 30, 40 cents a hundredweight more for a few months than yours, you looked at a place to move your milk. But when they went to component pricing, you had nothing you could compare to because you didn't understand it. They were paying you all on these components instead of paying you fat and then, say, 17 cents on a point of butter fat and so forth. So my wife and I bought a computer, and we started working with, I started looking up, because now I had the ability to access information. And what I learned was there's 9 million cows approximately in the United States. There was 90,000 dairy farmers. I got to understand how things were being done in Green Bay. At the same time, there was questioning about the activity in Green Bay, And Tommy Thompson, the governor then at that time, put together a task force because the farmers, Wisconsin and Minnesota, wanted to investigate the activities and how they were trading, and asked for one thing, that the buyers could not trade against intentions, which in layman language means that a major buyer of cheese, and let's say Kraft, could not sell at the Green Bay Cheese Exchange. They could only buy. Because they could benefit by selling a few loads of cheese, dropping the cheese price 5–10 cents on a given day, and then that next week buy hundreds to maybe thousands of loads of cheese at the lower price to benefit their corporation. Well, Tommy Thompson overloaded the task force with people from the industry and not producers, and on October 17th of that year, they decided that no, none of the participants at the Green Bay Cheese Exchange would do that. And it was only involving block cheese. Well, the next day, on the 18th, the cheese market dropped 21 cents because barrels were down 30 cents from the blocks. And before it was over, it dropped 53 cents. And after that activity, that's when the Green Bay Cheese Exchange got it closed and it went to CME. Well, the advantage of going to the CME is there was transparency. We had a way to see what was being traded at what price, being traded 3 days a week. So as I was working trying to put these numbers together and accumulating information, we got to the December of '98, and in Wisconsin on cheese milk we had 17.34 milk in December. In February we had 10.27. And the cheese market dropped 70 cents in 3 weeks in January. And my local cheesemaker, who I was not shipping milk to, said, you know, the co-ops have the right to fix this through the structure of marketing agreements in common. So I got to investigating that, and I went to looking at, because I had moved my milk to NFO at the time through the ARPA process, as many of you traded Lanco. So I started asking how much cheese was traded. I wanted to know these questions, and what I found out from the gentleman that gave me the information, there was 63 carloads of cheese traded in those 3 weeks. And there's 44,000 pounds of cheese in a carload, and that number came out to 2,640,000 pounds of cheese. It was either 61 or 63. I have to go back to the crash of '99. Gentlemen, I was saying to producers in support of an entity called Dairy Relief, which was created by NFO, created by DFA, that if dairy farmers supported an entity, a cooperative entity, at $1 per month per cow, there would be $9 million from those 9 million cows to do something to balance our overproduction. What it would buy with 44,000 pounds of cheese at $2 a pound, which would give them Wisconsin $18 milk, would cost us $88,000 to buy a carload, and I rounded it to 90. We had enough money to buy 100 carloads of cheese a month. So 61 or 63 carloads coming into a 3-week period was not a big deal to buy, would it be? At $1 per cow per month, you lost $7. We lost $7 in pay price. So about a month or so later, Dairy Herd magazine or Dairy Today wrote an article saying, it was a 1-page article that says when the dairy producers produce 2% too much milk, the price of milk will drop 40%. And I got really peeved, because no good business person allows 2% of anything to destroy 40% of your price. You simply remove the 2%. That's simple. That's how you do it. So I started working on a way that we could remove this, remove the product. So if we gave it to the food pantries or the schools or whatever, just let's get it to people. Instead of take less for it, let's move it to people. And that's where I've worked toward today. I'm not into supply management. I'm not into quotas. I believe what the dairy producer has to do today, because I don't believe anybody in this country can tell anybody how much milk is needed tomorrow. I believe the American consumer wants your production. You simply have to balance it when there's too much. And that's what dairy pricing is about. It's for you as dairy producers to stand at the back door of your processing plant and ask a price, because I believe that's why you do not receive a price. You've never asked. ARPA was talking about asking a price for your milk at the front door. With dairy pricing, because they had no monies coming in dues like dairy pricing does, there was no money to go to the back door of the processing plant and help your processing plant balance when you have overproduction. Two things cause overproduction. We're either producing more than what the consumer wants, or they reduce their consumption. Because you can reduce production, and if they reduce consumption, we still have oversupply, can't we? If they increase consumption more than we increase production, we have a shortage, which our experience was last year. Perfect storm. We have an increased value in the US dollar, we have more production around the world, and now we got too much milk in the United States, don't we? We have to balance. Nobody knows that from time to time, and the concept of dairy pricing is balancing your production. First, asking a price you need for your milk, and then when we have too much, simply have an order at the back door of your processing plant on your milk. Because I'll explain why it has to be your milk. And then you remove that milk and move that milk off to the humanitarian community, because they do it at no cost to you. And it's going to the people who need it. Otherwise, if you pay for it, you have this whole structure. In corporate America funds feeding America, the banks, the corporations, everybody's working to take care of the 1 in 5 that don't receive. In building this cooperative, I worked with Marvin Beshore at Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, to get the understanding what Capper-Volstead meant. And learning and understanding what it said, reading it, explaining, because I initially wanted to go to the Mercantile Exchange. I wanted to take $9 million and go to the Mercantile Exchange and just buy right off the chair. And I'm asking Marvin about this, and he says it's illegal. So I'm reading to him, or saying to him, which I've memorized, I said the Capper-Volstead, which was signed into law on February 18, 1922, says that farmers and ranchers, producers of agricultural products, have the right to price their production. They have a right to price their production with their neighbor if they form a co-op. If they farm a marketing agreement, came as co-ops together, and they have the right to form a federation and agency. So I said to Marvin, why can't I go to the CME? He said, you go back and say that again to me. I said, it says farmers and ranchers, producers of agricultural commodities have the right to price their production. He goes, stop. It says they can price their production. That means you can price yours, and you can price yours. But if you want to work together, you've got to form a co-op so you can talk price. So I said, okay, what's my problem? He said, Robin, do you know whose milk is in the cheese at the CME? I don't have a clue. How am I going to follow your milk on a truck to a processing plant, to a truck to the CME? I got no way of doing it. But because I was vocal in speaking up, I ended up on the state dairy committee at NFO in Wisconsin. And I'm sitting at a meeting one night before the state meeting, and we're sitting around there. There's a gentleman, an attorney from Milwaukee, comes in, employed by NFO, and he said, oh, by the way, we've got some dollars have come in from this dairy plant that filed bankruptcy, and so there's a little money coming in because now they've sold off all the assets and you're getting like 30 cents on the dollar or whatever. So on my ride back with the national director, I started asking him questions, because this was before my time, this bankruptcy. Oh, he said, when that plant closed, it was full of cheese. And he said, I'm really peeved, because he said, we had right to that cheese in that plant because it was our milk that was unpaid for. But NFO didn't want to take the action, so now we're just getting what's coming out of the brick and mortar. light went on. I can't price your milk at the farm. You make a raw product. I can't price your milk at the front door. But when your milk went in that front door, you weren't paid, were you? So it's still your milk when it went in there as fluid or powder or cheese or whatever it is. But I can stand at the back door with your money, with an entity, a co-op we create together, place an order in competition to the normal buyers and say, this is what we have to have. If you won't pay it, then we're going to buy it and remove it. What you say isn't worth what we are asking, and we're going to give it to somebody else and promote a new customer. That's how dairy pricing works. So you're asking your consumer for a price, and then you're balancing if you have more than they want to maintain that price. That's what dairy pricing is about. I have people who are concerned about their dime. Well, I'm giving up a dime. No, you're not. Not in my eyes. My eyes say you're investing a dime because your dime comes to dairy pricing. But it's not dairy pricing's dime. It's your dime in dairy pricing. And dairy pricing takes your dime and goes back to your processing plant because you can have the right to price your milk. And then when we pay that processing plant for that powder or cheese or milk, it goes back in their account. And then when you get your next milk check, it comes back to you. So what you're doing is using your dime to balance, protect the price, and maintain your price and income. That's what the dime is about. Or whatever more it might take to balance. Because you'd much rather balance 2% than lose 40% in price, I would think. Because if you want $20 milk, it would take 40 cents to balance, wouldn't it? If you're over 2%. Or otherwise you can have a 40% deduct. And that's what we experienced in 2002. Instead of having $20 milk, we had $12 milk. We had 5% too much milk. We should have spent $1, right? We'd had $19 milk. In Wisconsin, we'd take another $2 off for processing, for make allowance. But 17 beats 11.35. That's what Wisconsin milk was in 2002. Another experience that I had, and in follow in '99, is that said, well, we had all this milk, that's why we had this crash. Well, in August of '99, we were back to $2 cheese. If we had so much milk in January, why did we go back to $2? Because they had the right to fluctuate the market. What happened in August of '99? They found 65 million pounds of cheese someplace. That wasn't in the July report. And where did the price of milk go by November? Right back down the same thing, $2 $7 drops. We would have bought the cheese in January and the 65 million pounds of cheese in August, it would have cost us 8.5 cents a hundredweight. But instead we suffered $2 $7 pay drops. So that's why I've worked with, and others have helped me, many others have helped me create this to explain to you, you can do something. The cooperative law under capital laws gives you the right to do this. And support your processor, because remember, you make a raw product, it's got to be manufactured. People want it, but you never have asked the price. And that's what dairy pricing is about. How you spend your money. You can either spend it in price and receive it that way, or take the falls. That's what dairy pricing is, and how dairy pricing works for you. I'll give you an example of why I'm not a supporter of supply management. In 2001, after we went through low milk prices after 99, 2000, and 2001 August, the industry told us that we as dairy producers had our production totally in line with demand. That we would have good milk prices for several months. And then milk went down 40%. What happened in 2001? 9/11. We lost 4,000 citizens. And immediately the cheese market went down. Those 4,000 citizens did not consume 2% of the nation's milk. But they had a reason, traded on emotions, and down went the cheese market. And then never came back until 2004. If we had had the money and stood at the back door of our processing plants and simply said to the crafts of the world, no, you can trade above this, because remember the law says we have the right to set the minimum price. We don't close the CME because we want them to move that market higher above our support price. Government has no support price. When we had 11.35 milk in 2009, we had a floor price on powder at 90 cents. No floor price today on a new farm bill. Powder the other day was 71. So where do you think your next milk chip's go? That's the reason for dairy pricing. It's not a quick fix. Quick fixes are temporary. My vision and the whole thing is this, is to fix the dairy industry. Can't change price discovery. There's too many dollars against you to change that. But you have a system here that I believe and many others that you can do something about your price of milk and create new customers. When you take your milk to somebody else who's not consuming your milk, you're working to create a new customer. You know yourself, you can't taste a billboard, but you can taste a product, can't you? And Feeding America says that they have families that have not had milk in their diets for 2 generations. And when they take and put milk on those kids' tables, they never stop drinking milk. So this is your opportunity to use the structure that's already in place to grow new consumers. And that's what dairy pricing is set up to do. First, balance, price, balance, and then move product needed to those 1 in 5 children that are not consuming dairy products. That's what you're working toward. I had a nice meeting the other night with a gentleman from a co-op who, after an hour visiting, understood what dairy pricing is. And most people, when they first come in and talk to me, they want to talk about federal orders, how it deals with pooling and all that stuff. What they don't understand is we don't deal with raw milk. We only deal with finished product because perishable of your milk and processing. I had a vision at one time doing something with raw milk, but the only time I would get raw milk would be on Christmas, New Year's, 4th of July, Memorial Day, Labor Day, when they didn't want the milk anyway, and I still didn't have manufacturing for it. That was a headache. I'd have to dump the milk. And what people said, writing back from articles that I had back in 2009, says we have to take this milk to people who need it. And Mike just got a call the other day from Idaho humanitarian community, asking why, with all this milk being dumped, if there's that much, why isn't the humanitarian community getting some of it with all the people who need milk? So she didn't know that there was dairy pricing because we're still young and growing. So to give you a little background of how this all involved forming and why it was created. So, any questions?
If you're buying it at the back door, how do you control the price the processors are charging you to process that milk? Because there will be a cost associated with that, correct?
We place it on order price. We support $2.05 on 40-pound block cheddar. So we place our price and then the size of our order by the amount of money we have. That's our support price. We'd like to support butter at $2 a pound and also powder at $1.80 to $2 a pound. And we want the market to trade above it. That's our goal is.
As far as, so there's a, you had mentioned that that we as farmers own our product till all the way through the process, correct?
Yes, we do.
So then a processor's coming in, adding value to that product. How do we protect ourselves from a processor gouging us on a price to process the product?
You have to pick your process, because when we order a price, whether we're buying it from you, let's say we're buying 40-pound cheese, okay, and you make cheese, our order price is the same. Then you as a producer have to make a decision, is your processor charging more in a make cost than this guy is? That's why, you know, this guy's getting 20 cents or 30 cents a hundred more for his milk because your processor is taking that extra and make. The only thing the law gives us the right to do is buy at the same price or near the same price, and your milk at your plant. Now, the Department of Justice told us we do not have to pay the same price for the same product across the country because of production costs. So, milk here, fluid milk here, say in Pennsylvania is a higher price value than in California. We have the right, as long as we use California producers' money to buy their milk, Pennsylvania producers' money to buy your milk. So we can support milk at different prices, because even like learning from Mr. Lawrence yesterday is, you know, the Pennsylvania pricing system, you know. But we can't affect what the processor does in his cost. We're only there to support finished price and then what flows back to you.
I think you might be misinterpreting this. When he says your milk, there really has nothing to do with the processor's processing costs. He's buying at the back door, buying your finished product. He's not buying your raw milk. He's buying a finished product from the processor.
With the price of the processing already included in the price.
That's right, and then that sets the price, that's basically sets the price for all cheese, when you don't allow that extra cheese to go.
This is why we've gone to the 10 cents a hundredweight. There, I had a complaint about that. A producer producing 50 pounds of milk was paying more than one paying 70 when you were paying $1 a cow. He said, let's make it fair. I said, okay, let's make it 10 cents. So as the numbers want to come down, if you got a 50-pound cow and you're paying 10 cents, you know, you're $1.50. If you got a 70-pound average, you're paying $2.10 on a month. So we got the money to buy the milk and cover the processing, and Feeding America and those organizations cover your transportation costs to the people who you want. They have the distribution system already in place, so why not use it, right? They're a 501c3, so your bank, your feed mill, those corporation organizations across the country can feed money to them to pay for the truck and the diesel fuel to move the product. They already got 600 refrigerator trucks crisscrossing the country. When we met with Feeding America back in the spring of 11, I had two questions. One, how fast would this product move? Because the whole concept about dairy pricing is you never let the warehouse get full. Never have that wholesaler or retailer have advantage over our processing community and force him to have a fire sale to empty that to make room for tomorrow's milk. Have a place for it. Have a plan. So I said, how fast can you pick this up? He said 3 days or less. I said, how much can you pick up? Because there might be, you know, we might not buy anything for months, and then all of a sudden, we may have sold to us carloads, you know, in 1 week. He said, you'll never buy too much. The activity at the food pantry between 2009 and 2010 went up 40% after the economic crash of 2008. You will never buy too much. We have food pantries across this country that got no dairy on them. That's not right. That's not right. When we got a price that's gone down $8 from where it was last year, we got 8% more powder than we last year because our 16% export has dropped to 8. I'd much rather see you guys supporting a $20 milk price, have $1.60 taken off your milk price from that, than lose this price you have down here. I'm hearing Mike Eby at $17 and something his last, or $14.70 his last check, you know. Why not just take the $1.60 off the 20 and stand at your back door and take that powdered milk to people who need it and keep your price up there and simply say, hey, we're not going to allow you to do this anymore. That's the concept about dairy pricing. Supporting your processing, because we support the community. It's you, the producer, your hauler, and your processing community. We price it to the wholesaler and retailer. You know, never let that warehouse get crowded. Make sure it's moved, make sure it's fresh, and keep it moving. So that way the buyer comes in, he says, he don't want to buy it today for $2.05. It's sold to us, you know, which is you. He comes back tomorrow, I said, well, I changed mine, so it's too late. Well, maybe the next time he wants to buy you up. I better buy it today because it might not be there tomorrow. When I was reading and understanding and going over language written about Capra Volstead, one of the writers wrote in that, he said, this law gave the farmer and rancher, the producer of a product, the right to stand toe-to-toe to the large corporations to negotiate a price. Prior to that, you didn't have that under the law. You could be sued for antitrust. And they give an example of nut growers in California. He said, and the problem until this law where farmers could form co-ops is that sometimes there was only one buyer. And then the buyer had the advantage to pin one producer against the other for his advantage by lowering the price until you finally were willing to sell you what you produced. This way, under Capra Volstead, you had the right to form an organization and price your product together, and that buyer did not have an advantage on you to lower your price. And that's how dairy pricing has been put together. So.
Tell them how you tried to get National Milk Federation to do something like that and they turned it down.
Yeah. Being active as was, I made 2 trips to Ames, Iowa when I was on the dairy committee with NFO and so forth. So NFO decided that nothing was happening and we had all these low milk prices since '99 through 2000. So in March of 2001 they decided they were going to put together a meeting for all the co-ops to attend to hear what I had to say. And this meeting was held November 1st and 2nd, 2002 in Minneapolis. And I shared with those who attended of the 165 co-ops there were at that time what I just shared with you. I shared with Anisel. Marvin Beshore was there because I now had just figured out how we didn't have to go to the CME and we could make an effect by the process door. So when I got Marvin's attention right after dinner, I showed him what was, and I said, Marvin, what I just showed you, can I do this? And he stood there in front of all those co-ops and he said, Robin, you're exactly right. You can do that. And John Wilson from DFA was just down to my left because we sat in a room with a big square facing each other. And he said, I want to know more. So I explained more to John and the 3 national board members who were with him. And when I just got done with that, a gentleman in the far corner of the room stood up from Agrimark and he said, say, I've got an idea. He said, since we found out what this man is talking about, how us farmers can collect monies from ourselves, pool it together, he said, I suggest we put together a whole herd termination program like the government did in 1985, and we'll just terminate cows. And I looked at him, I said, I created this. This concept is to keep dairy farmers in business, not take them out of business. Well, at the same time, a 4 men that I knew called themselves Milk Power with some support there in Minnesota. What they were trying to do at that time in Minnesota is similar to what you have here in Pennsylvania. That overorder premium, to increase dollars. Their concept was to help raise the M&W price, which was the Class 3 price, to help raise all milk price. They had an organization, they were working to do something similar to me, and we were talking briefly back and forth. They had a concave meeting in Chicago at that time. Other ones came in and shared similar what I was just shared with you. And in 2003 in February, National Milk came out with their CWT program. And how did they fund it? Same deal, wasn't it? 10 cents. Put a support price at $1.30 on cheese. And when the cheese market fell below $1.30, I told them in that meeting, I said, you draw a line in the dirt, and when the price goes below something, you do something, and the price will go right back above it. When the cheese dropped to $1.30, National Milk said we're going to kill cows, and the cheese market the next day went back above $1.30. We could have done this through National Milk and through the co-op system, but they didn't want to support your milk price. They wanted to kill cows. No, really what they wanted to do is they wanted supply management. That meant terminate, in my mind, was terminate you. It was easier to get rid of a dairy farmer than it was to manage supply of milk, in my opinion. I never supported CWT until they went to the cheese program. They wouldn't talk to me until I did, and then they still didn't want to talk to me after they said they would talk to me, because they said they wouldn't talk to me until I was a member. You know, you don't balance the price of milk by terminating dairy farmers. And so I don't have a lot of time for national milk. So that's my experience over the last, since basically '98 till now with the dairy industry. I no longer dairy, most of you may know that. I sold my cows in March of last year because I just wasn't going to do this anymore. You know, I basically made money every year until 2009. One way or another, I figured out how to make money. 2006, I put together a beef cow herd. 10 was a struggle, 11 was a struggle. I went into a drought 13, 12, and 13 in Wisconsin. And I just said, this is enough. So, cheese market hit $2.42 the end of March, and I said, that's it. Cheese has never been this high. Cows went out the door. So, and right now I'm glad they're out the door. You know, but, you know, when you do something for 36 and a half years, it's in your blood. You know? I woke up yesterday morning, I went to Mike Eby's barn. I woke up this morning and I went to Mike Eby's barn.
Just can't get rid of that smell.
Something. I asked the dog why he wasn't at the barn this morning. I walked to the barn before Mike did. That's why the dog was still at the house. But I mean, it's one of those things, you know. I was born and raised on a dairy farm, and I'll be 59 in a couple weeks, and other than about probably 2 years, I've milked cows, you know. So I've lived what you're living, and it's wrong. And I think the only reason you don't have a price is you haven't asked. I never asked. But you have to balance. And that's what the dime is for, or 20 cents it might be sometimes, or whatever it is. But President Olson and I don't believe that we can probably go to the system we call price desired times overproduction equals assessment until we probably have 90% of the nation's milk. So right now it's just teaching you, you have the right to ask, and you have to be the one that balances. Don't ask the taxpayer. You know, I'm your taxpayer now. I'll gladly pay $4.50, $5 for a gallon of milk. But don't ask me to take my income tax money to balance your overproduction if you want to just keep producing more milk that's needed. Even though if the overproduction is not your fault, it's because the export market left you. You know, take control of your industry, tell your consumer why you do what you do, and then balance it. And balance it to people who need your production. Introduce them to it. That's the whole concept. Protect your back door. Don't let that wholesaler take away your price just because your storage room is full. Move it. It costs us a lot less to move that product to them than it is to have them take 40% of your price away. Any other questions?
You want to explain to them what dairy pricing is doing until we get to the point where we can manage price?
If I can ask a quick question
go
in
ahead.
between there. Is there any way to use the current deductions for our milk check to make this happen versus asking another farmer to give more?
Been there, went down that road with the 3 people at USDA. We're very proactive. We went to USDA. I'm supposed to stand behind it. We went to USDA so they know who we are and what we're doing, because we knew people were gonna, you know, people like to shoot at you, okay? If I can use that terminology. We also want people, whether we're legal about what we're doing. You know, can you guys really do this, dairy farmers? So we just didn't go to anything. We went to Department of Justice in Washington, Capital Volstead Division, part of Dairy Division, part of Capital Volstead. They looked at our website. We showed them everything. And the response we got back from the gentleman, he said, you are the first organization that understands dairy pricing, and what you have written down in your bylaws, you are exactly right. So if somebody wants to question our legality, when they call Washington, D.C., they already know who we are. But we cannot use that 5 and 10 cents that was in the 83 Farm Bill that's deducted today.
Or the CWT.
Right. You don't want your hands tied because there's so much hand tying to that 5 and 10 cent money. You want to be separate from that.
The only problem is getting that 90% of the farmers.
Right.
Or the 90% of the milk.
Right.
So if it's that trade-off of if you can not take something additional away from a farmer, your road's just less, shorter, easier.
But your dime is going around when you're in dairy pricing. When you're moving that product off, your dime isn't going around. You know, we can advertise all we want to, but you're just buying paper and putting it out there and hoping somebody's reading it. When you're buying your physical product at the back door, you're making disappearance and it's going to people and it's being consumed. They're tasting your product. So your dime is going around. That's the only advantage I can tell you. The big thing is to grow.
The point that you make there about easier, this isn't easy. And the harder it is, the better it is. True.
But John, when you're talking about what we're working on in imports and exports and increased consumption, is that what you're talking about, the logo?
No, I'm talking about what you're doing with the money until we get to the point where we can control price, weight gold, you know.
Well, right now, dairy pricing as board took the position, we support class 3, class 4, the price movers, okay, at these levels. But because of declining fluid milk consumption, the board has taken the position we will never stop buying fluid milk, no matter what the price is. Because there's only one way you're going to turn that around, is to continue to provide fluid milk to those. So right now what dairy pricing is doing is buying powdered milk from its members' production and fortifying and covering the cost of fortifying the milk called white gold. And when we don't have that, we're buying milk and going into food pantries here, because the majority of our members are right here in Pennsylvania. So we have milk every 2 weeks going into food pantries here in Pennsylvania to help increase, return around the decrease in fluid milk consumption.
Actually, every week.
Is that every week now, John? I was thinking it was every 14, so every week. So Pennsylvania producers are trying to help the food banks as much as they can, and the more we can increase that, the better, because that's where your future is, those kids. You lose those kids now as milk drinkers, and the thing is, it's got to be good. And as the process says, milk's got to be cold. Milk has to really be cold, 36 degrees, they're saying. To really have that quality, you really need to go from 38 to 36 to get that back, to cool down there to really stop bacteria and maintain that taste. And we really would like to see all U.S. milk at the standards of California, and not the standards of the other 49 states. And that's where we're working on right there. It's small steps, it's baby steps, but somebody has to make it, and it's your industry and it's your dollars. It's not dairy pricing dollars, it's your dollars in dairy pricing, and this is the position the board has taken, and we're all supportive, and we're doing what we can. We've also made an effort here to do something toward imports. Country of origin labeling, that looks like that's out the door. So we've made, you got one of those there, Amos? I can hand it to the gentleman so he can see it.
And the other question that we have to ask ourselves with that is, if the only thing we ever get accomplished through dairy pricing would be to fortify milk nationwide, would that be worth 10 cents? And my answer to that is absolutely.
I mean, we're stepping out and doing things that what appears others don't want to do, and we feel it needs to be done. And this is what the members have said to the board members, and this is what the board members have brought. To help with imports to our consumer, we created, and it's in the process right there, you have in your hand, sir.
That's milk, California standards.
National Dairy Producer Organization created here 2-3 years ago the 100% USA logo, which you see on that milk container. But they charge a 0.5 cent per dollar retail for that logo, and it's not being adopted. The processor is not putting it on because I believe they don't want the accounting of maintaining all the records of how much milk went out and the money coming back and writing a check to 100% USE organization. They might have to employ at least one person just to track all that money, all those gallons of milk going out. So I came up with a concept last May, had to come up with 3 words that would fit in a small enough logo, and those 3 words is only USA milk. And we have it in their folder, it's all in the folders over there. I share it with Mike Eby. Mike Eby's gonna have it on his chocolate gold milk when it comes out. It's on a cheese package already. We haven't brought it out nationally yet because we're still under trademark. We haven't got full on the trademark. Abner, you can credit Abner to the star in the A. Because the board said we want the color red, white, and blue. We want a red stripe, a white stripe. We want a blue background so it looks like the flag. And we looked at several, our graphics man showed up and we thought we had it all done, and then Abner calls me up and says, we don't have any stars, and there's stars in our flag. So now there's a star. So I put the star in the A. It is at no cost to the processor. 0. So whatever it costs them to change their logo and put it on the product, so when our consumers walk into a store and they pick that product up and they look at it, they know it's only USA milk. And who makes the decision who gets to put it on? Dairy Pricing's board. It's owned by Dairy Pricing. So we can go right straight to the consumer and say, they know Simply Shopping, and it's yours. So that's our effort to help the American consumer know whether there's imported products, dairy products in what they're purchasing. They don't have to read, they can simply look at the label. We're hoping it makes a difference.
And that cheese plant that cooked that's going over pretty well.
That's what he said, yes. When he had the Kroger people there, he sent it home with them, and he said, I sent them home with a lot of ideas. He had the Kroger, 5 people from Kroger in his plant here, and he called Tom and asked him if he could show it to him, and Tom says, yeah, go ahead. They were there for marketing purposes, but Nasonville, when he seen it, we showed it to him. We printed off about 270, 230 little stickers originally to put on his black and white labels on his cheese. And Nasonville processes about 1.2 million pounds of milk a day. Sells cheese all over the country and some outside the country. And so once he seen it and we did that, then he bought a print machine that would print color. So now he just prints it. It's all part of his label. In USA, that's the only cheese maker right now that we have allowed yet to put that on until we get trademarked. And Monday, Abner, we're going to be talking about international trademarking. So we have to make that decision before October 15th, so whether we want to be legally trademarked, say, in Mexico, and say maybe Japan, Korea, and China. But we're asking Kenny about where the greatest activity would be for the possibility of U.S. powder and cheese to be exported, and put that on there. Because we had to trademark the words, the 3 words, and then we had to trademark the logo. So when we go to other countries, and it was just short of $1,000, but it's a time waiting period. And then when we go to international, then again, it depends on what the international market wants and how much money we're willing to spend of the 5 cents, because that's your 5 cent money that's doing this logo and promotion stuff. So that discussion, we have our monthly board meeting Monday, so that'll be one of the topics, Abner.
You did, I guess, explain also that we do a lot of promotion. We hand milk out here and there, and
right.
That it's good advertising, and we want a good product. So we use really good products, whether it be cheese or milk or whatever, things we give away.
And Amos can tell you more where all you've provided milk to marathon runs and that kind of stuff here in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, the first marathon in Lancaster County is in April in New Holland. Last year, 2 years ago was the first time I was there. I had gotten 1,000, fifth quarter fresh to hand out. And it took us all day to hand out 900 of them. This last April I was there, I had 1,000 of the chocolate milk I got here today. In 3 hours time I was out of milk. They came looking for the milk because I was there last year. They came looking for the chocolate milk this year. You know, so it's an important key to educate the public, and the best way to educate the public is hand them something that they can taste. No TV commercial, radio commercial, or billboard is going to do that. But you hand them a product that they can taste, they'll be back.
And we stress, if we do give out products, it's a good product that they like.
Right.
Tastes good, and that's good advertising.
Because when we buy milk at dairy pricing, we buy whole milk. Because, you know, you're providing a fluid milk to nutrient deficient people. They don't drink milk because they don't have it. So they get whole milk. That's what we buy. You know.
And or fortified.
Or fortified.
Yeah.
Yeah. We want all the stuff in there. We want them to taste the good product, and we want it cold. And like, as Amos just said, last year, he couldn't get rid of all 1,000, and this past year, it didn't take no time at all, and they were gone, because they looked fine. You know, that's the promotion we do, not billboards.
You know, and the dairy princes are involved a lot. You know, now I know Ally, from what I understand, Ally normally pays to advertise for the dairy princes to do it, of what dairy pricing buys the milk that the dairy princess gives away. And you know, I always said I can't compete with them because I ain't good looking enough, you know, but it really helps because they go all over Lancaster County in different functions, and they're in the public, and the public comes to them because they're the dairy princes, and then you give them a good product. Can't beat that. That's the best advertisement anybody could do.
So whenever you see a dairy princess handing out milk, it's your milk. It was your time, it was your dime to bought that milk.
And the good part about all of that is that these dairy princesses were not used to having milk to hand out. Maybe every once in a while, but they just didn't have dairy products to give away. Nobody wanted to do it. So.
And the food pantries are overwhelmed by getting these fresh products.
Oh yeah, it's just unbelievable that all this time these poor people weren't getting.
That was Blessing Mo's first comment when the first 1,500 gallons, when they got it, they said to Mike, it's fresh. Usually when we get milk, it's like 3 days from expiration. We got fresh milk, yeah. It was probably milked from the cow the day before, went through the bottling plant, and there it was in a gallon. Because that's what we buy. We buy fresh. You know, so they had 2 weeks shelf life at Blessing at Home, you know, to get it to the people.
So does this get into the paper, or do we utilize that publicity to help strengthen the relationship between farmers and the public?
That's why we have Dieter here. We try to get him involved whenever we can.
But the main public doesn't read the paper, so the farmers.
That's right, but
Dieter's paper.
we also, every time we have a major event, it comes on the radio. It gets put on the radio, and Allied pays for that promotion, and they direct people to, like, a Harrisburg Family Fun Festival or a Lancaster Family Fun Festival, and it's all connected.
A group of farmers giving milk to a soup kitchen has a different effect than a big co-op donating some. It helps make create better feeling between farmers and the public.
You're making a relationship between the consumers and the farmers, and that's important.
On a lower level than if it's just some co-op or some.
You're getting the farmers and the consumers together so they know each other.
If you get enough publicity with that.
And you know, that's a very important bridge that we need to fix, because there's entirely too big a gap between the consumer and the farmer.
Right.
You know, I have a farmer, an Amish guy, he does tours. And just last year, there was a tour there from the college out of Philadelphia. And they wanted to know which cow produces 2%, which cow has 1%, which cow has chocolate milk. And I said, is the consumer removed that far that they don't know anymore? Because if that's the case, we got a long bridge that we gotta repair. And it starts, you know, a lot of farmers tell me, why do you bring milk to me? I know what good milk tastes like. I said, the education process starts here. We have to educate you so you can help us educate the next step. That's where it starts. And we got a lot of work ahead of us.
Majority of farmers really had no idea what 2% milk was.
Talking about the gap between the consumer and the farmer is very true. We had some people out of Harrisburg, they came to our farm, they were about 11 and 13-year-old kids, and they were intermingling with our children, and they asked, hey, can we watch you milk the chickens? That's where they thought milk came from. I mean, it just blew my mind.
Yeah, and for us that grew up on the farm, we have trouble comprehending that, you know, because everything that happens on the farm is second nature to us. But somebody that's never been on a farm, that don't have a clue, we have trouble understanding that, because we've never been there. You know, I heard of a milk truck driver, he's been driving a milk truck for years, he took his son along, and he asked his son if he wanted a glass of milk out of the tank when he was getting the milk. He said, milk don't come in tanks, it comes in jugs out of the store. And his dad hauls milk every day. So us as parents, are we failing the next generation because we ain't passing on the education to the next generation? Or does it go a lot deeper than that? We need to start educating as we move forward. You know, just like schools, we talk about we want to go after schools, get our milk into the schools. If the school kids don't like the milk that they get today, they quit drinking milk. That means they're never going to teach their kids what milk's all about. And when their kids come along, they definitely ain't going to buy no milk because they were never taught to drink milk.
That's why we're working to get fortified milk in schools here in Pennsylvania with your money. So we can put better tasting milk in the schools. But we have to have the milk at the same price that the milk is today because the schools of their dairy budget. Of course, we also have to work with Michelle Obama's requirement program. So it looks like if we can do this, it's 1% milk, fortified with protein, and the dairy pricing members, 10 cents is picking up the cost of the protein. So we can do this into the school system, so we can get good tasting milk in the school. You know, it's big steps, little steps, working toward big steps.
And we have to take a lot of those little steps.
Right.
We just can't jump into it. It just,
But did you ever see a baby start walking right off the bat? They
yeah,
gotta
but
crawl.
that's what everybody wants to have happen.
Yeah, I know, but we gotta crawl before we can walk.
That's right.
Not just that, if we fall down a couple times, we'll stand up and try it again.
Yeah, yeah.
The thing I want you to remember, without you, there is no dairy industry. No matter how many of them they try to get rid of, without you, there's no dairy industry, right? You're the most important thing. Because there can be dairy cows, but unless there's someone who harvests the milk, refrigerates it, makes it available for shipment, there is no dairy industry. You're the most important. The second is your consumer, as you just alluded to. You have to make good quality milk, and then you have to talk to your consumer. Our intention is use this is to make YouTube videos and so forth, so these people in town who don't know that milk doesn't come from a chicken will learn that it comes from something else on a 3-minute or 5-minute video. They can understand what we're going to try to make the connection between urban and agriculture and try to close that gap. That's what part of your 5 cents is looking for.
Along the lines of what Ben had mentioned, is there any place, or has it been tried to when you guys make a big donation of fluid milk to a food pantry, to send a press release into, say, the Harrisburg Patriot? You know, dairy farmers donate X number of gallons of milk to the local food pantry out of their own pocket.
When we do the very first one, we'll get front page paper, that kind of stuff, and then after that, it gets smaller, you know, but it's there, like in the country today out of Eau Claire and so forth, but you know, they don't wanna read about it if you're doing it every week.
Yeah.
But when we make that first big donation, yeah, the media's there to cover that, very much so, to make it. Right now in Wisconsin, we have 6 blocks of cheese, either once a week or twice a week going to Eau Claire to it's called Family Table. They serve 1 meal a day to anybody who needs a meal in the Eau Claire area. And they serve 4,000 to 6,000 meals a month, and it's all donated. And we've got block cheese going into there now. It's coming out of Nasonville. It did come out of Lynn Dairy, but those producers' monies have been used up, and now Nasonville Dairy producers' money is buying the cheese, and it's going to Eau Claire, so, you know, but there's just so much need. And what we found, and the same way with Blessing of Hope, unless they're receiving something, they don't have the capability of picking it up. Blessing of Hope, first time we thought our order would be 1,000 gallons, so they had come with 2 minivans. They ended up being 1,500, so they came with 2 minivans 2 days in a row. Well, now that they're getting milk every week, they got their own trucks, you know? Isn't it, John, do they have their own refrigerated truck, Blessing of Hope? Before they didn't have one. I don't believe they did. That's why they just used regular, they rented 2 minivans to haul the milk, see? We gave, our accounting person is in La Crosse, and he's on the board at the Hunger Task Force in La Crosse. And he learned what we were doing. He says, can we have some of this cheese? We had 20,000 pounds, you know? Didn't know how to get it, so Great Lakes picked it up in Nasonville and took it over to their warehouse right outside of town at La Crosse, and they got 4 pallets to start with. And all he says, oh my God, don't bring us any more, we don't know what to do with this. Because they never got cheese before. You know, so they have to start slowly, so they put together their structure to be recipients of your production, you know. So the balance of the pallets ended up going to Feeding America, ended up going to Green Bay, to the larger satellite, and then they broke it down and then went out from there. But they call, you know, it's just like this gal called Mike a week ago from Idaho. Is there any way that you farmers can provide some of this surplus milk that they're calling to the food pantries? You know, we have to put the structure together, you know, and we'll all build it just like Blessing of Hope was getting milk, so they got a refrigerated truck. They put in a refrigerator in the warehouse to put the milk in once it got there, if I recall.
They had the refrigerator before.
They did?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
So,
other products, I think.
those things are coming, you know, but the urban people, you know, it's nice to see it, have a news flash, but they don't want to see one every week, so. I have nothing else for you. If you have no more questions, and I'll be here for other questions later.